I'm starting to feel like I ate some bad Pokeball.
Where are you going?
Now, I will use this one to communicate with you.
Dude, what the heck is going on? Pokemon Ranger, a cool series of video games and the focus of a handful of anime episodes, just like this one. I've already said my spiel in the last video, so grab a bowl of cereal and get ready to see more Solana because this is the two-part saga, Pokemon Ranger Deoxys Crisis. As this episode is another that takes place during the Battle Frontier arc, we catch up with Ash, Brock, May, and Max on their way to the next destination, when they stumble right into a crisis. A Deoxys crisis, if you will. As Aurora appear in the sky, a flock of Swablu act weird, and even Pokeballs don't seem to be working. Solana shows up and as usual is no nonsense.
Oh boy! I'm Brock, don't you remember? I've missed you so much!
Not now, Brock, please.
Capturing an Altaria to help lead the flock to safety, this time having some new animation for the capture stylist sequence. But she catches up with the main cast and everything actually gets moving pretty quickly. Again, there was a bit of a recap at the beginning of the episode, but as soon as they see the flock of Swablu and Altaria, the plot starts moving, which I really like. We're given a bit of an explanation for the Pokeballs not working, the cause being geomagnetic disturbance, which is affecting everything except for Solana's capture styler. As if the episode wasn't already enough of a commercial for the Pokemon Ranger games. Now they get all the cool technology. But then a Deoxys shows up and gives Max the stink eye. I do also like that because this episode focuses on a Pokemon as important as Deoxys, they acknowledge the events of the Destiny Deoxys movie. The cast knows what it is right away, and Solana mentions a report that was done after the crisis in LaRue City. Something that just makes sense. If some aliens took over an entire city, there would be no hiding that. Though right away Nurse Joy mentions that a meteorite had landed in the mountains nearby. So already we do know that this is definitively a different Deoxys from the two we met in the movie. And even then the movie already confirmed that there are multiple Deoxys, so it's great that we get to see more of them appear in different parts of the world. But at this point Solana sets out for the meteor location on her own without the main cast, which I was totally ready to watch until Max followed her and was chased by everyone else. Thanks for getting in the way, Max. But we see another Pokemon Ranger capture in action as Solana enlists a Miltank for help. Truly the most powerful Pokemon at anyone's disposal, though I'm not exactly sure what Miltank was doing in a cave. And now Deoxys shows its face and attacks. I do know that I was dogging on Max for being his usual annoying self, but he's taken an interest in Deoxys after it started giving him visions. So he's the voice of reason for only this topic and no other. Because something is very wrong with Deoxys as now everyone figures out it's in some sort of pain. Even Miltank's heal bell doesn't completely cure it enough to be captured. They should have used rollout. Nobody can stop rollout. But now things are starting to get intense. Solana can apparently only capture Deoxys if it's in normal form, but instead is showing off and shifting between every single form. These episodes are the first time that we saw speed form in the anime, as it was introduced in Emerald version. But Deoxys ends up alone with Max and Meowth and uses Meowth as a means to speak. This has happened before a few times in the anime where a psychic Pokemon mind controls Meowth in order to speak, which is a pretty interesting way of utilizing Meowth's unique abilities for these Pokemon that are intelligent enough to communicate, but cannot physically speak. But when we hear Deoxys speak through Meowth, its speech is very simple. As it communicates, it's feeling sad because space was so cold and lonely, and we get the impression that this Deoxys is very young and confused. It's still scary and threatening while it's battling out of this confusion, but in this moment it plays even more so on making Deoxys out to be sympathetic. It's actually kind of sad. But Deoxys takes both Meowth and Max away, and that's the end of the episode. Well, quite the bold decision to write Max out of the show through alien abduction, but I think it's the darker tone fans have been clamoring for. Okay, obviously this isn't the end of the episode, as I mentioned it was a two-parter, but this first episode is mostly built to set up the whole conflict. Yes, there is a climax and a battle with Deoxys at the end of this episode, but it really works best when watched alongside the second. So before discussing final thoughts, let's go ahead and check out that second episode.
Trainers, which one of these Pokemon evolves into Sapphire? Okay, trainers, if you chose Arbok, you were right.
Pokemon Ranger Deoxys Crisis Part 2 picks up as everyone else has just left the cave and reconvenes at the Pokemon Center. I always like moments like this when Team Rocket decides to team up with the heroes, because they may be bad guys, but they're not bad guys. We get some exposition about solar winds and how they're lining up with the geomagnetic disturbances or something. This whole thing is the sun's fault, apparently. Thanks a lot, Solgaleo. Deoxys keeps Max and Meowth in its own little pocket dimension, which is where it's able to hide. And here Deoxys just kind of repeats what it said earlier, but just expands on it with some accompanying visuals. Max is able to start making a breakthrough to Deoxys, which is a case of kid characters in Pokemon being used right. Their innocence allows them to connect with Pokemon regardless of boundaries. But things start to get worse as Deoxys is in even more pain. But just as everyone else gets back to the meteor, it just explodes and blasts them out of the cave? What the heck is in that space rock? Well, apparently the meteor had a reaction to the energy from solar winds after it landed, and that transformed its core into Deoxys, but continued creating geomagnetic disturbance, which is hurting Deoxys. And you know what, all of this isn't really as far-fetched as it sounds. We know that Deoxys has roughly the same origin from Pokedex entries and from the movie. And there we see that it's also vulnerable to electromagnetic energy, so I guess this all checks out? But now the climax of the two-parter begins as everyone enters an all-out battle against Deoxys, trying to get it into normal form once again. This is pretty cool. Everything is just as intense and high stakes as it should be, and requires everyone to work together. Deoxys is powerful and needs to be saved, the meteor is a ticking time bomb that will affect the wild Pokemon in the area, and Max and Meowth are still captured. It all really works out. And Pikachu is basically out of commission for this episode as it's also being affected by the meteorite's energy. So it's up to Ash's Sceptile to bring on the moves, and it's able to keep up with Deoxys in speed form, even jumping onto its back and blasting it out of the air with Solar Beam. My dude, this is so sick. And now finally Solana has Deoxys right where she wants it, and captures it in the Capture Styler, ordering it to use Recover. And I understand that Deoxys was literally a baby and was being tormented by this bad vibes of the energy, but like all it had to do was use Recover? I guess it's just, you know, just a thought. Also the meteorite explodes, but Deoxys saves everybody with a safeguard. Deoxys is saved, and so it flies off to explore the world, finally free from pain and suffering. Okay, so that's a lot to digest. Though this was quite the enjoyable two-parter. What did I think of it? Okay, so the title of both episodes frames it as a Pokemon Ranger adventure. Solana is definitely in these episodes and is an active part of it, but most of the focus is around Deoxys and Max. I think maybe because the episode doesn't need to be stopped every so often to explain a Pokemon Ranger concept, that allows Solana to be more naturally integrated into the episode. Again, there are good high stakes and spectacle with Deoxys being around, but I feel like it's just a usual Pokemon episode. A Pokemon Ranger character just happens to appear in it. I still think it's a good idea to introduce Solana into the canon of the anime and have her interact with Ash and friends, but I feel like she could have carried an episode on her own. Though maybe just not this episode, because again, it really works because Max is in it. The fact that they gave this story 2 episodes to play out was definitely the right choice. Overall, I really like this episode, and I think that Solana fits in well with everyone else. The way that things are set up, they literally can't solve the main problem of the episode without her, but in a nice poetic way, she benefits from their help as well. And I suppose maybe that's how she grows? She understandably wants to do her job to help Pokemon and to ensure civilians don't get harmed either, but allows Ash and the gang to help because they're the main characters, I guess. Other than that, I can't really think of anything, because otherwise Solana as a character doesn't really change or grow much. She's cool, experienced, knowledgeable, and shows up to help save the day. But just as soon as she accomplishes her mission, she's gone without a goodbye, and after this episode only shows up one more time in the anime, which might be the definitive conclusion to her character arc if there even is one. So I have basically the same thought as last episode. She's got a great character design and she's really cool, but feels underdeveloped. There was also a Nurse Joy hanging out with them in this episode. She contributed to the geomagnetic exposition and holds Plusle while it's feeling ill. I didn't really mention her because she's the real questionable inclusion, but I figured I'd mention her here because I guess I'd feel bad if I didn't. This episode was cool, a good way to incorporate both Pokemon Ranger and mythical Pokemon in an episode of the main series. And so with Deoxys saved, we basically kind of finished everything in Generation 3 for Pokemon Ranger, at least in the main series anime. There are a few things here and there which I'm looking forward to, but we'll just have to get to those when they happen. But that was Pokemon Ranger Deoxys Crisis. But anyway, hey, this is GatorX, and I want to thank you all for watching and supporting, especially channel members like Justin R. If you want to become a channel member as well, you can get your name shouted out here at the end screen and get some access to some cool special emotes in the comments and live streams. This one is one of my favorites. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter as well, but this has been GatorX, and I'll catch you all later.
Capture Pokemon in a whole new way. Then use their powers to complete exciting missions as a Pokemon Ranger. Pokemon Ranger, only for Nintendo DS.
Who's that?
It's Solana, that gorgeous Pokemon Ranger!